Today, I'm really excited. We have Kevin Kilgore with Meta, a.k.a. the old Facebook, one of the big site leaders up there in Oregon. And he's going to tell a story about coming from as a chief deputy U.S. Marshal all the way to where he is today. He's probably going to break down some stuff. So let me tell you, if you're in the federal world right now, you want to pay attention to this. This is going to be a really cool chat, and I'm excited about it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and children of all ages, it is yours truly once again, the corporate security translator and the author of that little book right there, So You Want to Get Into Corporate Security. Today, I'm really excited. We have Kevin Kilgore with Meta, a.k.a. the old Facebook, one of the big site leaders up there in Oregon. And he's going to tell a story about coming from as a chief deputy U.S. Marshal all the way to where he is today. He's probably going to break down some stuff. So let me tell you, if you're in the federal world right now, you want to pay attention to this. This is going to be a really cool chat, and I'm excited about it. And he's looking good, looking sharp. How are you, sir? Kevin, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, Carlos, my friend. Thank you for having me on. I know we've postponed this a couple times, and I'm glad we're getting her done. And it's a nice day out, and all's good.
It is a beautiful day out, and it's a beautiful day out here in Discovery Bay. It's, I think, 72 degrees, blue skies, ready for me to get on the pool and jacuzzi later on with probably a little bourbon. I'm thinking a little bourbon might be the way to go today. It is midweek. They call it the old hump day, Wednesday. And then, so that's how it goes, man.
Very good.
Listen, so let's get right to it. Why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself, man, where you came from, and then I'll start shooting out some questions at you that I know the folks out there want to hear.
Yeah, you bet. Real quick, I kind of boomeranged. I'm back where I grew up here in Central Oregon after retiring from the federal government. We'll get into that more. And I grew up in Central Oregon on a ranch, lived in Portland, went to college there, was a reserve police officer there for a few years, and then a brief stint and a transition to full-time officer right at the same time the Marshals snagged me. So I went off to U.S. Marshals, came back to Spokane, Washington, Eastern Washington, did a lot of traveling when I was single, different assignments, worked a little while in the Joint Terrorism Task Force, did a little bit of prisoner stuff that you start with, and worked my way mainly into judicial security and judicial security supervision, then on into operations, and then the chief deputy U.S. Marshal, basically overseeing the whole district, and then to basically a kind of a young age, early retirement to start the second career I'm on now.
Man, look at you, Chief. That's so. Were you walking around and people are like, "What's up, Chief?" Is that like how you guys do it in the Marshals world, or what?
Yeah, that is how we do it. That's how we do it in the Marshals world. It's informal to some degree, but yeah, the title. I think that's the only buddy that the Marshal who was appointed by the president. You call him Marshal.
What?
But then the chief gets called chief. Everybody else pretty much just gets called by your first name. Or if you're a supervisor and it's a deputy that did something wrong, you just yell at him, deputy.
Oh!
And that's how that works. Yeah.
That's how that goes. But I got a little something for you here, bro. Look at this. Look what I got. Look what I got here, buddy. Yeah. Thank you very much for the coin, my friend. I got it right here. So let me put it right back.
Yeah, that's one of the best ones we ever had, actually. I need to get an order in on some more of those.
Well, not because you're on the show or anything, but that's the best one I have. Period.
Yeah.
All right. It's not because you're on the podcast, but listen. So let's start breaking this down because I'm sure there's a lot of federal folks out there, and I know you're a marshal, but a lot of the federal folks tend to follow the same kind of path, same type of retirement path, same type of
Sure.
you name it. And you and I were talking a little bit earlier about those paths and possibly the different ways that you could have gone or you could have taken your path. And how you broke it down. So why don't you kind of just break down, I remember you talking about 5-10 year plan, maybe a 15-year plan, man. So just start there and start breaking it down for the folks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anybody that's a Fed that's listening to this knows that there's different types of classifications of jobs. I started off as an 1811, same as like other agencies use special agent, right? And so underneath that program, you have to go 25 years or 20 years and 50 years of age to retire, right? And we'll get into some specifics later, but I just want to back that with the framework, so to speak. And so that's kind of a tough role sometimes. It's not as easy as like if you're a police officer or a detective at a department, you can transfer cities, your certification is kind of easy to move around. It's hard. It's very hard to move federal agencies. Some people do it. It's hard for numerous reasons. It's hard because of the paperwork. It's hard because of possibly taking a demotion to do it. It's hard because federal agencies have sporadic openings. It's hard because the learning curve, the cultural curve, teaching old dogs to do tricks. So people tend to stay in the agency in which they're hired most of the time. And I think that leads to a little bit of monotony and people wanting to get into looking at the private sector. There's an underlying belief that it's a good place to work, and people always want to explore it. And no matter where you're at in your career, usually not your first few years because you're so excited, and enthusiastic. But in that period, that probably about 10-year period, you start kind of guessing sometimes, am I in the right line of work? Maybe it's a 7-year line, but somewhere in there, I think that kicks in.
Man, that's got to be interesting. So let's unveil a couple of things here that for the folks that are on the other side that don't know. So every federal group, and what do you mean by that? Is it like the FBI, the Marshals, all different groups have different cultures?
Right. And each one of them, has a mission, some more broad than others. DEA, you do drug cases. You might get some spinoff cases that were related to it. ATF does guns and bombs, right? And FBI is kind of the general catch-all. Marshal Service is protection of the courts and fugitives. Those are just examples of some of the bigger agencies. You could be in a small agency. You could work for NOAA, for example, and you could just do fishery crimes. You could work for IRS and do financial crimes. But they're all pretty well, mission driven agencies. Right.
So you're telling me this for the people right now, if you're listening and you're about 10, 15 years in or something like that, and you're thinking about maybe I should try another federal route here. So it is difficult to change over. I could just say, do you have to go through all the paperwork again? Like if you're a newbie?
Not as much, right? Because your background clearance is there, usually to the level that needs to be. A lot of your Office of Personnel Management, your OPM paper or guideline can be transferred fairly easily, but it's the onboarding with the new agency. And then, of course, any of the training that they say that you need that you've missed out on. It could be all the way to needing to go to another full academy because they don't recognize the academy you went to. Or for tradition, they force you to go through your academy. I do believe maybe things have changed, but even though I was a special agent, 1811 deputy marshal through the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, if I was to transfer to the FBI, I'd have to go to the whole FBI academy again. So, those are deterrents that keep people to stay in their own agency a lot of times.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not quite sure I would go through police academy again. It was a little, Osceola County, Florida, but I don't think I would go through that again. I just don't need to. But you did mention a couple of things. So as you coming up in 10, 15 years, something like that, I mean, if you're just the marshals, you're focused on a certain area, right? And I'm sure you get bored after a while of just doing that. So how do you cope with it? And for you, when was enough in order for you to start transition to maybe let me try this corporate thing?
Sure. And I think my story is probably similar to others, especially as you get into the management stream. When I came off of basically being involved with fugitives or being out doing protective operations where I'm out, interviewing people on threat cases, investigations, and putting together actual cases. And you get into management and you're in the office a lot more. You're dealing with personnel, HR issues. You start wondering, did I leave some of the more fun times behind in order to get a little bit of a pay raise and do something different? And you don't really realize it, but you get into kind of a rut, and then you forget to specialize. And fortunately for me, with the judicial security, that was my route, right? Protection of people, not so much reputation, which is a big one here in the corporate world, right? Yep. And high tech world, but the people, the property, and being proactive, obviously looking at, the enforcement of federal crime. So being more proactive than defensive posture and physical security, but still I had that skill. Now, if I would have just been a stated general purpose deputy and did a little bit of, witness protection details here or there, hauled a few prisoners, caught a few cases, caught my 3 fugitives a month, I wouldn't have a very good resume to compete out there with people that specialize in certain areas that we're looking for in the private world. I mean, for example, certified fraud examiner from IRS special agent. They have a niche. I mean, they could go to, certain, private entities or corporate entities, especially true corporate, that are looking for prevention of fraud or investigation of fraud against their company because it is affecting their assets and their finances, right?
Yeah.
But if you just kind of pop along and become a general deputy or even maybe an FBI agent, as long as you can move around and show that you're specializing in some areas and are diverse, you have to find that match in the private sector. You can't just say, and it'll be apparent if somebody starts getting on some of the job services, especially like LinkedIn and some of the bigger ones, that these jobs will have specific requirements. And I think it's common that as a federal agent, you feel kind of cocky, like, hey, if I wanted to, I could go out there and snag that private investigation job or that private security job or that private physical security or that, position. And in reality, man, it's not that easy.
But hey, I'll tell you right now, man, that was money. What you just said was money. And I'll tell you why. It's because I always tell people, if you got about 10 years left and you're going to stay for a while, start focusing on what the corporate world is doing out there if you want to have a second career, and try to find yourself a niche within your business that's going to connect you to the outside world. And I like your CFE idea there, the certification, because if you're some kind of an auditor or financial, you can easily get into that. But then in your case too, a leadership position also gets you into budgets, gets you into operational needs and all these other things, which are big to what we're trying to do. So I'm a huge fan of that, man. That was a good one. So as you continue it on, now let's talk about your own path. So you said probably 15 years in, where you're already like, all right, I got to find something in. When did your mind start changing to, I got to get into the corporate world?
Yeah, it was probably, I retired right at 21 years and 10 months, maybe 22 years of law enforcement time. And I had some civilian time before that. And so I'm in that deferred category where I'll pick up all my benefits when I turn 57. But I think it's important for people to think about exactly what you just said, that you really got to start doing some planning that 10, 15 year mark, because you need to look at some of the options that are out there. Quitting or resigning at 15 to 18 years isn't going to do much for you. I think you can get a little stipend from the 10-year mark, but you really got to hit that 20 to get any benefits out of it. So you need to start specializing, looking at what it is you want to do. Is it physical security? Can you start, knocking out some responsibilities in physical security? Is it investigations and fraud? Well, investigations and fraud, there's general investigations, right? And then there's fraud. How is that going to be applicable to your resume? And not just the resume, there's a federal format for resumes that comes off an old form. I think it's called the 171, that now they allow personal resumes, and everybody just cuts and pastes and they have this 8-page resume. So everybody's everybody's a superhero, right? And you think that because you have this lofty resume, I imagine you've seen quite a few of them, that somehow that's instantly going to get you the job out there. But it doesn't.
And it's quite interesting. Real quick though, resumes, everybody, key here. If I get more than 2 to 3 pages of resume, man, I'm crying. And I've seen 8-pagers. So let's slow down on that. Let's concentrate on what you've done in the past. Don't just go through all your training that you've done in 20, 25 years, either military, federal, law enforcement. Put all that in your resume, especially if it doesn't attach back to a job description. If it has nothing to do with the job description, it's kind of pointless. But another good point, man. Love that. Continue, sir.
Yeah, and to that point, I actually did end up using a resume service. I fired a few of my big ones out there with like literally no response, and then I used a resume service, and and I applied for this job of where I'm at now, and it was positive. But anyways, I'm going back to that. So in those categories, and sorry if I'm pawing around here.
No, it's good.
My earbuds just kind of beeped at me, so I'm just making sure I got a backup plan and backup course of action here. But what I think is very important is there are, and I've ran into several people now in the private sector that just 5, 7, 8 years into their federal career, they said, this isn't for me. There's no way, even if I move or transfer offices or I've been trying to go to another agency for another 2-3 years. It's not working out. I just can't take it. I'm popping smoke. I'm out of here. And at that point, I can see that you're possibly young enough where you can just start right off and move into, a new life, a new career. Because you're in your 30s, late 20s, and you can do that. 10, 15 years in, you need to make that decision if you can stick it out and make it to another 20. You probably should. And so then you get people like me that get to that mark and just go, you know what? I'm 40 whatever years old. I think I was 45, 46. And I said, I'm not doing this for another 4 or 5 more years till I'm 50, then looking for a retirement job. I said, you know what? I'm going to defer my retirement. I'm going to start a new career, a new professional career, have success at that, enjoy that new lifestyle, enjoy that change. And miraculously, it was almost 4 years ago. So it was right before COVID and all the other nonsense that came along with the lack of admiration for law enforcement that are out there just trying to do the right thing. That came along with some of the rioting and everything else. But nonetheless, so there's that mark, right? The second category. Then there's third mark where you just wait it out, put up with whatever. You're 55, or I'm going to max it out and go to 57, and now I'm going to look for a retirement job. I tell you what, I mean, not that people age discriminate by any means out there, but you're no spring chicken. You're not necessarily up to speed, lingo, what's going on. If you're at that full-on retirement age with 28 years of service, there are a lot of real high upper end jobs. If you're way up in the organization, a director, assistant director, SAC, that kind of thing that you can kind of move into because the company wants to use your connections and notoriety and some of that executive level management experience you have. But for the normal special agent or supervisory special agent, that's not going to work out real good for you. Trying to go on a job search at 54, 55 after you've literally been involved for so long in the federal system that you've lost some relevancy with what's going on in the private sector.
Absolutely, man. And even technology. I don't know if you remember this or not, but they're always behind on the technology. I know some parts of the government, they're technology forward, but for the most part, they're a little behind on what's going on in the corporate world out there. And that could be an issue. But I want to bring it back down to a little bit of what you said. It's funny, man. And maybe you could tell me this too, but I have a lot of friends that get to about 20 years and they're like, I got 5 more. I'm going to do 5 more, do the 25. But I always tell them this. I always say, look, if you end at 20 and you jump on a new gig, a new job out there, right, that comes with bonuses, that comes with 401ks, that comes with stocks, that comes with a pretty good pay for what it is. Wouldn't that be better in the long run than your 5-year difference, the headache, the stress, the possible civil liability, the numbnuts, people that you got to deal with out there? What is it what would you say to that? Because I tell them all the time, hey man, just do the math. Do the math.
Yeah,
If 2025 is good, let me know.
I think that's really important. And if you're close to that 20 years and close to 50, it's a matter of age, just a year or two, maybe it's not that big a deal. But I'm not too ashamed to say that I left honorably. I wasn't under investigation. I didn't, have some, trumped up injury or anything. I had a really good office going, and I was just tired. I was battling with attorneys every day, battling with the federal courts, battling with the culture of some of the people that we worked with. And it was just, started to really affect kind of my psyche and who I am and what I want to be to my family. And when you balance out your family life, who you are, what you want to be, I was ready to risk that new career. And it was scary, right? I mean, it's always scary when you start something new, but that's definitely something you have to weigh. And for me, the loss of a little bit of pension, a little bit of retirement monies, and instant medical when I could make it to 50 and retire is offset by the great benefits. High-tech benefits are better than government benefits, right? Maybe not in some corporate security, but in high-tech also, yeah, the stocks, the RSUs, the bonus system, and you may not start off at the salary that you're making if you're in upper federal law enforcement, but when you combine all those things together, you should be exceeding it. And the flexibility that you have to get involved with different projects and different scopes and pillars of the business is it's rewarding.
Yeah.
It's been a very nice change for me.
Absolutely. One of the big change that I always say once you go in the corporate world, at least for most corporations, definitely the one that I work for now, is the ability to really take care of my family. That, they give me time to do those things. They give me time off. They give me time that I didn't even know that I had to go take off. I'm learning every day that I had more time, and it's crazy. But they really take care of our families. The benefits are amazing, and really good folks. And if you get on a good team, that it happens often in the corporate world, then you're golden, and a lot of great stuff come out of that.
Absolutely. And it's once you get on board, we've talked about getting there. We can talk about getting there a little bit more, but don't be frustrated. Like, if your resume gets rejected here and there, I'm working with a deputy that's highly involved in judicial security, is kind of an early retirement age, about 50. And helping him kind of, get the right wording in some of what he's doing right now, and trying to get him into some private security jobs that helping him a little bit on the side. And it is frustrating because once again, you have to figure there's 5,000 to 7,000 for DEA of actual sworn agents, DEA, ATF, FBI, Marshals, State Department has a few thousand, couple thousand. There's 27 law enforcement agencies with special agents, investigators. I think there's 40 some law enforcement agencies in whole.
Wow.
And so just think of that volume, right? So when you decide you're going to step out there and put your foot in the water, let's just say that 5% of those are competing out of 50,000, right? So yep. You and 2,500 other people are out there applying for a lot of the same jobs, believe it or not, because the volumes of decent corporate high-tech security jobs that are out there at any given moment are not voluminous, right? I mean, there's probably a couple hundred out there right now, and maybe out of that couple hundred, 10% hit what most federal agents would want to do. So there's 2,500 of you applying for 20 jobs right now. Yep. So there is a lot of who that's a big deal, right? So
it's a huge deal.
If I can say anything, I'd say stay involved with join some of the private networking agencies where you also get a lot of benefits to the federal agent. ATAP, Association of Threat Professionals, is a good one. Yep. There's several others out there, and you'll meet a lot of people, and I think that's very important to network.
Absolutely, man. 100%. I always say network is what gets you in the door. Back then I used to say, the resume will get you into the interview room. Today you have to network in order to get you into the building. You can't even get in that interview room,
Yeah.
man, unless you're networking. That's how I see it. And you got to do that. LinkedIn is a great tool for that. I use it often. And I've met a lot of great friends. As a matter of fact, throughout COVID, I've met a lot of amazing people that I finally got to meet in person. And it was like we were buds for years, man. It was pretty cool to see. But hey, listen, we're running out of time. This thing goes by quick. Again, like 30 minutes. But I want to talk to you about, once you transition it, now you're in the corporate world.
Okay, sure.
What were some of like the tough things that you thought, man, I got this, big time, chief deputy, chief, what's up, chief, big time chief. All of a sudden you come into the corporate world and you're like, that's a little different.
There's a couple things, when I was first hired, we did our own internal investigations basically on site, and they were very similar to any sort of administrative investigation that you've been involved with as a federal agent. If you've had to, been assigned basically a misconduct investigation or preliminary investigation to see if it goes to internal affairs or if it's going to stay local and that type of thing. So there's a little bit of that, but it's very, very, I don't want to say, I'd say more benign, kind of like, and they're for usually minor things, right? At least to start with, violations of policies and procedures.
Yep.
So that turns more into like just a counseling session. So, be prepared for that, and a little bit of, guff back in your face, which you're not used to because, in the federal system, that's insubordination right there, So then you're gonna be talking to them again, or somebody else is, about that incident. So that type of administrative investigations. The speed at which you don't have to operate. You have to reset your thinking process. That
wait, you're telling me you're not kicking down doors anymore and bad guys?
No, and nor are you having to worry about your employees doing that. At least like your contract security force, hopefully, right, or rubbing somebody on the pavement. But it's just that when I was first hired, my supervisor told me, hey, just take about 3 to 5 months here to up ramp, just observe, watch what's going on. And that was just incomprehensible for me to be
How
able
frustrating is that, ain't it? Because I've gotten that too. Right? You just wait 6 months. I'm like, man, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Just kind of job shadow and hang out, and we'll grab you and we'll go look at things, and we'll do this and that and show you how this works and, these procedures. But it's, you don't have to feel rushed. And not feeling rushed after being rushed for a long time is it's not easy, right? I mean, most of us, even if you go on vacation, it takes you a while to actually get on vacation.
Yeah.
Not so much for me now, but that's a big change. That's a big change. I think the kind of the happiness, the overall joy that people have around each other is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because there's usually some sort of animosity in most federal offices. For whatever reason, there's a lot of camaraderie too, right? Like close camaraderie, because you've been in a lot of close situations together, and you can empathize with what's going on. Here, it's not as empathetic, but it's more understanding, and everybody kind of gets along, and everybody's got a role to play. And that doesn't matter if you're in an office, or in a data center like I am. It's a similar culture. Yeah. It's just a culture of openness and understanding. And that really takes a while to get used to. Yeah. I actually believe that it was probably a good 1.5 to 2 years before I really fell into the groove and the cadence of what good product looks like, how to do things slow and methodical. And also deal with the emergencies, right? I mean, we're emergency managers on the site, and we have an emergency every once in a while. But you know what? You just spring back into that, and it's like no big deal. I mean, your heart rate doesn't even go up. So it's slowing down, and it's dealing with problems in a methodical, logical, process.
But that's the beauty about your heart rate not going up, though, because you can keep everybody else cool. Or at least you can try, right? Because your partners are like freaking out, and you're like, hey, we're good. We got this. We're doing all right. Well, I love it, man. I love it. So listen, here we go. We're going to close this out, man, with a couple things. If there's a couple of little items that you can give to the folks that are listening to today about the transition, some of the things that you should focus about, some of the things that you should do here in the last 2 minutes or so, what do you think that should be?
I think you should focus on really evaluating whether or not it's your personal happiness, the wholeness of you are, as a law enforcement officer. If you have the willingness to stay, to be part of what you're doing, and if you can continue to do that, or if it's worth it to you to make that jump, to do that scary leap, because people get mad and they go, oh, I'm mad, or I'm under investigation, or this or that, I'm going to leave, I'm going to go to private. And it's more than that. I mean, you need to really take a good amount of time, do a plus minuses list, look at what's out there, do your study and do your homework. Don't make spur of the moment decisions. And by all means, sit down with a financial advisor. There's many federal financial advisors that specialize in federal employees, and talk to them. Talk to them all the way up till you're in negotiations with, this is what I'm being offered, and this is how it equates, and make a good decision there. But money isn't everything.
Yeah.
Your family, your well-being, your personal well-being is paramount, right? I mean, we all do our work. We're all passionate about what we do, whether it's security, law enforcement, fire, military. We're in it for the right reasons, nearly all of us. But when it comes down to it, your family should be more important, I think.
Yeah. I think you're right too. And I think you might have taken chapter 1 of my book. Is the reason why it was chapter 1, by the way, it's called Take Stock. It's really figuring out who you are, what your family is going to really, are they going to be involved again in another 20 years of you doing whatever, and what companies you should work for. But know thyself. That's the key to that chapter 1 there, man. And that's important.
That is important. And I do remember that from your book. I read it when it first came out. I think it's great. I think it's very helpful. And I think people should read it and enjoy it, and, take it to heart. It's the truth.
I love it, man.
But it's a scary transition, and you do feel lost for probably about a year. I think there's what I would differentiate from high tech to corporate security. I think there's some true corporate security out there where you could, put on your blazer and your tie or your khakis and go in and feel like you haven't missed a beat, especially if it's with a bunch of former colleagues that have retired and they brought you in, and everything is very formal. But in high-tech companies where everything's moving, changing, and the atmosphere and culture is different, you better be ready to slow down, adjust. Not that you're not going to do good work and put out great product, but just that sense of urgency, except for emergency management, is not there. It takes a while to fill that void. But that void's there for a reason. It's because they know they get better work out of you if you're happy and healthy.
That's it, man. That's it. Hey, real good stuff. Kevin, I appreciate your time, man. Thank you for kind of stepping in for 30 minutes here with us at the Corporate Security Translator Podcast, man. This is really cool for me. Thank you for stepping out, man. And we'll end it here, dude. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And everybody take care out there and be safe.
All right, everybody. So that's it. Look, that was Kevin. Big time Kevin Kilgore. Let me tell you something. I got it. Look, Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal. I got it down here, man. It's a big title. I loved it. And now hanging out with the great social media company and doing a lot of great things with them, and excited to be here. So again, listen, Corporate Security Translator, that guy right there. So you want to get into corporate security, check it out. It's all the way around. And hey, we'll catch you next time. We'll see ya.